Hello everyone, and welcome back to Living Wisdom and Dharma World. Today we continue our deep exploration of Vairochana, one of the greatest masters of early Tibetan Buddhism, a direct disciple of Guru Padmasambhava, and a primary transmitter of Dzogchen, the Great Perfection. But today we will go one step further. We will speak openly but carefully about miracles. Not miracles as entertainment, not as proof to convince skeptics, but miracles as the natural expression of realization, appearing when grasping dissolves and compassion becomes boundless. We will explore the extraordinary events that surrounded Vairochana during his persecution, and the equally extraordinary moments that arose when the Bhutanese little prince, said to be his reincarnation, revisited the caves where Vairochana once practiced. As always, let us listen not with fascination alone, but with discernment. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video to inspire others on their path of discovery. Share your thoughts in the comments below. Your reflections may spark meaningful conversations and mutual growth. Together, let's start our exploration. Miracles in Buddhism, a necessary clarification. Before speaking of any extraordinary event, the Dharma asks us to understand one thing clearly. In Buddhism, miracles are not accomplishments. They are considered incidental, almost unavoidable, side effects of deep realization. The Buddha himself repeatedly warned disciples not to cling to miracles, because fascination can become a new form of attachment. And yet, the Buddha never denied them. Why? Because when the sense of a fixed self dissolves, the laws of experience loosen. When the mind abides in non-duality, the boundary between inner and outer becomes permeable. This is the context in which Vairochana's miracles must be understood. Persecution and the miracle of unbroken mind. During Vairochana's exile, his enemies did not merely seek to punish him. They sought to break his spirit. According to oral histories preserved in the Aba and Derong regions, Vairochana was imprisoned in underground chambers meant to induce madness and death. One account describes him being thrown into a sealed cell filled with frogs, creatures believed in local belief systems to exude poisonous vapors when concentrated together. The intention was simple: kill him without blood. Yet days passed. When the cell was opened, Vairochana was found alive, seated upright in meditation, his breath calm, his body unharmed. From a Dzogchen perspective, this is not supernatural dominance over nature. It is a result of non-resistance. When the mind does not contract in fear, the body follows. Later attempts were made to torment him with insects, fleas, and mosquitoes released into his confinement. Witnesses later recounted that the insects seemed unable to settle on him, as though repelled by an unseen field of stillness. But Vairochana himself never described these as miracles. He continued to recite sutras aloud, maintaining compassionate intentions, even for those who tormented him. This is perhaps the greatest miracle of all, the inability to generate hatred under torture. The miracle of conversion without argument. Eventually, something remarkable occurred. The very rulers and guards who persecuted Vairochana began to experience profound unease. Dreams troubled them. Illness spread among those who continued the abuse. Meanwhile, wherever Vairochana was allowed to teach, even briefly, peace and clarity seemed to arise. One local king, often identified in oral tradition as a Gyarong ruler, is said to have visited Vairochana personally. There was no debate, no defense, no condemnation. Vairochana simply remained silent, and that silence was transformative. The king released him, publicly repented, and not only restored his freedom, but supported the building of temples and translation centers. Buddhism took root in that region from that moment onward. In the Dharma, this is known as activity beyond intention, when realization reshapes conditions effortlessly. Miraculous abilities and Dzogchen realization. Traditional accounts attribute certain cities or extraordinary abilities to Vairochana. These include the ability to remain without food or water for extended periods during deep absorption, the capacity to endure extreme physical conditions, and, most intriguingly, the ability to alter bodily perception, appearing smaller or less tangible in confined spaces. In Dzogchen, these are not powers pursued deliberately. They arise when a practitioner fully realizes emptiness inseparable from appearance. When form is known as empty, it becomes flexible. Vairochana's ability to practice in extremely narrow caves, spaces ordinary bodies could not enter, became part of local oral lore long before modern times. Revisiting the caves, the child who remembered. More than 1,000 years later, the Bhutanese little prince, Nong Jigme Jigten Wangchuk, traveled to Tibet and China with his family. What unfolded there startled not only lay people, but experienced monks. At several locations, the child identified caves associated with Vairochana's practice, sometimes contradicting established tourist markers. Local elders later confirmed that some caves identified by the child were indeed known, only through oral transmission, not written records. At one site, the child explained that the commonly pointed out cave was incorrect and that the true cave lay elsewhere, unreachable by ordinary paths. Subsequent verification confirmed this. When asked how Vairochana entered such a narrow cave, the child replied calmly, "He made his body smaller." This was not spoken playfully. It was stated as a matter of fact. The miracle of recognition and emotional overflow. Perhaps the most powerful moments occurred not through displays, but through emotion. When entering a particular cave associated with Vairochana's deepest practice, the child knelt before the statue and wept uncontrollably. Filming had to stop. He waved away cameras and could not speak. This reaction lasted a long time. From a Dharma perspective, this is deeply significant. It is said that places where deep realization occurred retain a residual clarity, a kind of imprinted stillness. Sensitive practitioners, especially those with karmic connection, may feel this intensely. Later, the child quietly said, "I practiced here for a very long time. My body became very thin." No historical text records this detail. The rainbow and the returning sun. Upon the group's arrival in Lhasa, a golden rainbow appeared in the sky. The child pointed and said that at its end was a cave where Vairochana had practiced. Rainbows in Tibetan Buddhism are symbolically associated with rainbow body, the dissolution of the physical form into light at death, a sign of very high realization. Later, at another remote cave, the child insisted on meditating at dusk. According to witnesses, after the sun had already set behind the mountains, the surrounding light seemed to increase again briefly, illuminating the cave entrance. No explanation was offered. No claim was made. Practice simply continued. Miracles and the question of purpose. At this point, we must ask, why did these events occur at all? The Dharma answer is subtle. Miracles appear not to convince, but to soften rigid minds. They arise where compassion meets conditions that need opening. Yet both Vairochana and the Bhutanese child consistently redirected attention away from the extraordinary back toward ethics, intention, and liberation. The child repeatedly expressed concern that some people carried heavy karmic obscurations and prayed for their purification, saying he wished others would not fall into suffering states. This mirrors Vairochana's own conduct precisely. Closing. The life of Vairochana teaches us something profound. Miracles fade. Stories blur. Legends shift. But realization leaves a direction. Whether through a persecuted master meditating in darkness, or a small child quietly weeping in a mountain cave, the Dharma continues not because it is dramatic, but because it is true. May we learn not to chase miracles, but to cultivate the causes from which wisdom naturally arises. Thank you for listening. If you found this teaching helpful, please like, subscribe, and share so others can benefit from the Dharma. Feel free to share your reflections in the comments below. May our practice be sincere enough that even without miracles, our lives quietly benefit others. May all beings awaken to true peace and liberation.